Did you know you can control the amount of memory and number of processors WSL2 distributions use? Did you know that as of Windows 11 22H2, you can change the default networking mode of WSL2 distributions? Using a .wslconfig file, you can change all installed distributions' default behaviors and values. Likewise, using a wsl.conf file, you can change some of the default behaviors within a particular WSL distribution. The .wslconfig file is a Windows text file used to configure advanced settings globally across all installed WSL2 distributions. It does not exist by default. Therefore, it must be manually created in the user's user profile directory on the Windows host using any standard text editor such as Notepad or VS Code. It is important that the file is named .wslconfig and not .wslconfig.txt or with some other extension, and that the dot must be present at the beginning of the file name. When a distribution is launched, WSL detects the existence of .wslconfig, reads its contents, and automatically applies the configuration settings. If the file is missing or malformed, WSL will launch the distro as usual using default settings. By default, a WSL2 distribution consumes 50% of the total memory and has the same number of logical processors as the Windows host. The network's default behavior is NAT, in which the Windows host provides network address translation to the WSL2 distribution. In this example, using default settings, you can see the Ubuntu distro has 32 gigabytes of RAM, 16 logical processors, and a NAT-provided IP address. Now, using a .wslconfig file, I'm going to limit the memory to 8 gigabytes, limit the number of processors to 4, set swap to 8 gigabytes and the swap file location to C/temp, and put networking into mirrored mode. To view memory, to view the number of processors, to view swap, to view networking info. An important note about networking mode is that the setting is only available with WSL2 on Windows 11 22H2 and later. With networking mode set to mirrored, the WSL2 distro mirrors the host Windows IP address and MAC address. Also, by default, each W2 distro shares the host name of the host Windows computer. That is, unless you use a wsl.conf file within a WSL distribution. The wsl.conf file configures local settings for each WSL distribution and is stored in the distributions /etc directory. The file can be created and edited within the WSL distribution using VI, Nano, or Emacs. However, the file can only be created or edited using sudo or by logging in as root. You can also view the file's contents from the Windows host via Windows Explorer or the terminal path. Not only can you change the WSL2 distribution's hostname, you can also define how WSL interacts with the Windows host. As mentioned earlier, each WSL2 distribution will have the same hostname as the Windows host. Also by default, a WSL2 distribution interopts with its Windows host in the following ways. The contents of the Windows local drives are mounted under /MNT and the drive letter, and Windows paths are automatically appended, allowing Windows programs to launch from within the WSL environment. Do the following to change the host name of a distribution and to change auto mount and interrupt behavior. Notice that the host name now differs from the Windows host. We can no longer list the contents of the Windows local drives, nor can we execute any Windows applications. On the topic of interoperability, be sure to have VS Code installed on the Windows host with the WSL extension. Also, I highly recommend installing Windows Terminal to manage and navigate the various environments and shells. A few notes. For any changes to take effect following a modification of either .wsl.config or wsl.conf, a running instance should be shut down for at least 8 seconds. If a running WSL distribution is shut down or its terminal is closed and restarted too quickly, the immediately restarted WSL instance may not pick up the changes. At the Windows host, use wsl-list-running to view any running instances. Use wsl-shutdown to terminate all running instances. A word of caution: disabling Windows interoperability in wsl.conf will hamper WSL and VS Code integration. I hope you enjoyed this video, learned something new, and found it useful. If you have any feedback, corrections, or suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and pass it on to others. And I thank you for watching.